So, good afternoon, everyone. And I'm sure all of us love thrillers, don't we? And as the name suggests, twisted truths, and they keep us on edge. And we're lucky to have two successful thriller writer amidst us. Well, so let's see what they have to say, and I hope they spill some beans and let us know some secrets of their trade. So, shall we begin? Yeah. So first, let me just ask, why thriller? No, why did you, Anurag, why did you choose to be a thriller writer?
Uh, well, I chose to be a thriller writer because I have been a big thriller fan from childhood. The first novel I read was James Hadley Chase, and that led to a lot more James Hadley Chases, and then Frederick Forsyth and Jeffrey Archer, and the entire leg of basically thriller writers. So we are all storytellers in my family, and when the opportunity came, thriller genre came naturally to me. I am very good at plot writing, and I think it helps when you are writing a thriller, basically. So yeah, that's the reason for writing thrillers.
I guess we need to agree with you because you do write some very interesting plots. And Richa, you've been a journalist. And how come the plunge into, writing mystery?
Well, this is something I mentioned at my TEDx talk as well. I just said if there's one section of the population that constantly and on a daily basis has murder on their minds, it's women.
Oh,
I mean,
really?
I,
That's
God knows,
interesting.
God knows there's enough people annoying us. So I think, and I feel, when women take to writing, especially the initial forays, people expect chick lit. I hate the term. I feel it's such a reductionist way of reducing an entire perspective or a story to something that is a label suits you or what you're about to expect. So well, starting off, I did start with contemporary fiction, and when you start out, you start from a place of familiarity. I
Right.
wrote a book called I Didn't Expect to Be Expecting because I didn't know what I was expecting as a mother or a writer from myself.
That's such an apt title, I tell you.
Yeah, I think it was a little too intellectual on my part because my publisher said don't take such long, cumbersome titles. But I learned my lesson. But moving on from there, I think as Anurag said, I've read everything like from my dad encouraging me to read the Upanishads, my sister introducing me to Kamla Das and God knows what and the Georgette Ayres. And I was reading anything and everything. And I think thrillers were also a very early introduction. So I think I was always, I had a predilection for the saucy, secretive things in life that life has to offer. But I think also when it came to my second book in The Decision, I realized that I've always been obsessed with detective fiction in particular. And we tend to take clues from the West for everything when it comes to literature as well. So when it comes to literature, there should be no geography or gender. But I always thought that you talk about detective fiction and cobbled streets and foggy London mornings and a detective with a hat. And I just wanted to turn that on its head because I was heavily influenced by Shauradindo Bandyopadhyay's Byomkesh Bakshi and Satyajit Ray. And these were iconoclasts, dhoti-clad, oily-haired detectives. And that fascinated me. And I'm very desi at heart. And I come from a family of storytellers just like Anurag. So at the confluence of that, and my love for the genre. I mean, I just realized that I had to come up with this oily haired, guy from Kanpur, big dreams, small town, doesn't matter, it doesn't stand in the way. So that's how I started. And because I look at life in a sort of a humorous way, I kind of combined this storytelling with the humor, and from that point on, I decided that I would mix my contemporary fiction with thrillers because I just find it interesting. It's all around you: comedy of life, comedy of manner, interesting characters, and somehow weaving all of these perspectives into a story, and especially thrillers, I think for me makes it more evocative to read, to write, and hopefully for the readers to read.
Yes, and it makes us more evocative to read as well. So thank you for doing that. Well, Anurag, you paint a very dark world underneath the glitzy curtains of Goa's casinos in the Goa Gambit, your latest book. Well, how much of it would you say is real and how much is fiction? Was any research that went behind it or some personal experience?
So I lost a lot of money while researching the Goa Gambit, and I yeah, I went through around 10 casinos across the world, interviewing I think around 80, 85 people to create the characters in this novel. People who worked in the casino industry as well as people who were basically social gamblers and high rollers. So, as far as the characterization is concerned, though it's not specifically based on any person specific, I have cherry picked specific attributes from the people I met and the stories I was told. Um, but it's real. It's real. And the gambling floor in the casino, as portrayed in the Goa Gambit, is real. However, as far as the underbelly is concerned, that's a fiction of imagination of the writer that I am. There are no, lockups in these ships moored in the waters of Goa, as they have been portrayed in the Goa Gambit. I think it talks of the bygone era, probably 50, 60 years back, when casinos used to be a gambling den, which were predominantly financed by mafia money, which I have taken influence from to create this underbelly. So this underbelly is one, it's a fiction of imagination, and second, it is not a reflection of Goa as a state. I was in Goa day before yesterday for a book launch, and I was asked a lot of questions, and I told them that this book could have been based anywhere else in the world. It just so happens that live gaming happens in Goa, and I was creating the casino world in the Goa Gambit. So the name, the Goa Gambit.
So I could say that there was a lot of backlash from Goans.
Oh yes, it started from not being Goanese but Goans, and yes, and apparently I have a section where Vindaloo has been described, and yeah, I got that wrong. So
Oh,
yeah,
that's a huge crime, I believe.
yes.
And Richa, your mystery books are interlaced with humor. Quite, I think, contrary to Anurag's. So, what makes you feel that humor is important in mystery books? And do you think you relate to any of your characters?
Um, so, one of the authors who really influenced me, as a teenager was this lady called Irma Bombeck, and she writes humorously. And something she said kind of stuck with me. She said that there's a very thin line between tragedy and comedy, between humor and hurt, and between pain and laughter. And incidentally, these are not the mental meanderings of an indulgent writer. It's actually scientifically proven. I was at a recent festival. I was at a crime festival recently where I was speaking to this forensic expert, and he said that the center of the brain that releases cortisol uh, is it very much in the same vicinity of many other emotions that make you feel happy and endorphins. So, this is that interesting space, which allows me to somehow make a commentary on many things in life, intersected with a mystery. And for me, writing meaty, hearty stories which kind of exact every emotion that pretty much everyday life has to offer, that makes it a very interesting, space for me to operate within. As far as identifying with the characters are concerned, I think as human beings, we accumulate a reservoir of experiences as we go. So there's bits and pieces of me in everything. Again, I'm full of quotes this morning, but I feel like smiling people, great weather, it's making me that way. There was this very interesting quote I read once when I was reading the National Geographic. He said, there was a gentleman who said, we are not natives of the place, where we come from. We're not even native to this moment in time. It speaks so much of the transience of, human beings, and we come from all sorts of places, and I tend to look at my characters in the world as a migrant. I was born in one place, we were just talking about it, and I have been in many, many cities. So I think I always have an outsider's perspective. And when I'm writing my characters, sometimes if you can shed the arrogance of who you are and where you come from, you learn to look at life in a very simple way. You look deeper, you observe more, and that actually filters and filters down into your writing, and that's what makes your characters relatable. So I feel like there are bits and pieces of me and the world that I interact with and the people that I meet and everything that I write, in terms of characters.
Yeah, we are but travelers.
Yes, all of us.
Yep.
Yeah. So, Anurag, as Richa said, we authors can't help but put ourselves in characters that we create. So, which character would you say are you in the Goa Gambit?
So the Goa Gambit, as I mentioned earlier, the characters are based on a large number of people that I interviewed when I was researching about the book. So, and these characters are basically I am cherry picking specific attributes from the people I've met, the stories they've told me, and then building a character, right? I don't think there's any single character that I would say it relates to me, but amongst all the characters, the protagonist, which is Jay Shah, the fact that he's such a risk taker. Jay Shah is the kind of person, who could be sitting at a funeral having a conversation while counting cards in his head. He's good with people and great with numbers. It's a character that appeals to me because I have also been a big maverick in my life in terms of risk taking. Whether it was, starting to write at 35, I left my corporate banking job and started writing, or today I am a very active trader in the stock markets and I trade daily. So risk and the corresponding reward, it comes very naturally to me. And as a result of that, most of my novels, you will see, they deal with the subject of greed, money, and ambition. Because I think these are things which I've seen very closely in my life, both in my corporate and personal life. So, if I was to relate to a character, it would be Jay Shah, who's the protagonist of the Goa Gambit. Yeah.
So lovely. I think um, when it comes to numbers, I guess you might find yourself more related to your other book, the Dalal Street.
Yeah, so again, a quote now. Yeah, so there's a Dan Brown quote that when you're writing, write about a subject you know nothing about, so that you learn along the way when you're writing. And Dalal Street for me was the novel that I could have written without any research. It was based on my life, very frankly. But when I was writing my first novel, I wanted to take up a challenge, so I wrote about the art industry, about which I knew nothing about. So Kalayuk was the debut novel, and I went along reading and learning as I wrote that novel. And The Last Street came second, which was something that, ideally speaking, we all have a novel in us, one story, and that story for me is The Last Street.
So, Richa, is there any particular technique that you follow in plotting your story or placing the twists and turns?
Uh, Tomes have been written about how to write a book, uh, all easily available, and there are many books, some of which I've referred to as well. But I've realized that it's a very individual process, which you discover only with practice. Um, I am not too stringent as far as, too stringent is the operative word. I've realized something after having, writing my sixth book and written, overall 8 to 9 books, is that 80% of the structure needs to be clear to me. And once that is in place, and the 20% is enough for me, to activate my intuition and meandering, and I need that much of wriggle room because I can't be straight jacketed into, writing to a particular synopsis for that particular chapter because I find that stifling. Having said that, I've understood the importance of, structure and discipline. Not taking your flight of fantasy with every chapter because you'll never get to the end point. You'll just be, you'll lose your way along the maze somewhere. So 80-20, that is the ratio that works for me. As far as the twists and turns are concerned, I know the end point, but getting there, like I said, it happens within the wriggle rooms, and the twists and turns happen according to my whims and fancies.
Okay.
And I think that is what works best for me. And sometimes, if I have the arrogance of knowing exactly where I've arrived and the manner I have arrived, there are people to, dispel me, of that notion of knock that off my head, like my husband who's here right now. He's the first person. So Stephen King said you need like 3, 4 ideal readers. He's my first, second is my sister. So I came to him after I wrote my first comedic thriller, Kanpur Khufia Private Limited, and I said, you know what? It's done. This is it. He looked at it and he said, crap. It's horrible. It makes no sense. You've gone off on your own tangent. So I had to rewrite the second half of the entire book. And that is why, I think the final outcome of whatever you infuse into your book has to be a combination of a certain amount of clarity and confidence and humility to know what to negotiate when, and and also be judicious with your words after you're done. So I think that is more or less what works for me. Some of the thriller writers I speak with, I don't know which one you are, Anurag, but their writing space looks like the green room of CSI Miami. Index cards, one to the other. This is what happens. He dies like this. This is the crimson and all. And I'm like, okay, I haven't gone into those details, but yeah, I'm understanding the importance of this kind of environment creation when you lose your way, particularly. And that happens to me, that's happened to me twice in the last 2 years. And then when you have this whole cohesive look in front of you and all these guidelines in place, then you just go faster and then you can trundle along and find your way. So I think combination of intuition and structure and discipline, like I said, works best for me.
Yeah, that's wonderful. That's one secret we know now. What about you, Anurag? Do you have any, specific way that you go forward?
Yeah, so I think it's good to lose yourself when you're writing because that allows you some flexibility. So I have two things. The plot, as far as the plot is concerned, I more or less know the plot when I begin writing my novel. Okay, but then the characters take their own life and they go in different directions, and I have to tame them back as far as the plot is concerned. And as you have mentioned in one of the questions, right? The fact is, I introduce my characters very early in the novel. In the first half of the novel, you see all my characters and the world that I've created. And what that does is that it allows the readers to basically start playing the whodunit game from the very beginning. And the readers then get involved in these characters. And when readers get involved in your characters, then they want to know more. When they want to know more, basically it becomes a page turner automatically. So it also gives me the opportunity by introducing characters early on that their own subplots, basically, I can then start hiding clues and hints about the final climax of the novel when my readers are chasing a particular subplot or a particular character. And these are well fleshed out characters with their own motivation and their own life goals. And there's conflict, and even the readers can see the conflict. So I think it creates a sense of tension and excitement early on in the novel when the actual plot has not even begun by actually putting the characters out there. And then I take the readers on a particular path with twists and turns. And since you have 8, 10 main characters with their own subplots running simultaneous to the main protagonist, his arc, right? So you can create all the more, twists and turns as you go about, because all those plots are in some way or the other in conflict with the plot of the protagonist, depending on who the sub character is. So that's the way of writing. But towards the end, the plotting is based on the three-act structure. So to that extent, I more or less know about it, and it's quite sacrosanct. I don't play with that much. But within that, yes, there's a lot of leeway in individual characters and so on. My first novel, I did not write it on the basis of the three-act structure. And there I found that the characters just took a life of their own, and I was running in all directions. And every 2 months, 2.5 months, I had to sit down and then, take the story back to the direction I wanted it in, because it had gone somewhere else. Because I wasn't very clear how the final act will work out. And the final act was only decided when I was like 85, 90% through the entire novel of how it's going to end. So both the things work, and if you read both the novels, you will find the difference, because plot, I think, is much tighter when you know how the ending is going to be, vis-a-vis when you are running in all directions, not knowing how the plot will end. Yeah.
So I guess you need to be more very disciplined with your characters, rein them in.
I think you rein the character in vis-a-vis the plot, but at the same time, you need to give the liberty to the character. Sometimes very interesting stories come out which you had not planned initially when you had begun writing the character, because the character is an individual, right? And uh, you have a highly motivated character. He can run in a different direction and can take a story in a different direction and give rise to a turn or a twist which you had not envisaged initially when you were writing the novel. So these things actually come as you go along. And I'll have a day when I'll be very excited because I've suddenly figured this very interesting twist where I know that the readers will fall for this trap. and I'll be able to basically give them that shock and awe moment. Uh, yeah, I mean, I go with the entire story. Yeah.
Thank you. But Richa, coming back to Vigilantes, on the outset, it may seem like a fun, entertaining thriller, but I guess also has themes of women being invisible and underappreciated. So, how do you balance these themes and the thrill in your storytelling?
So I think intrinsically, I think growing up as a woman in any part of the world, there's a certain set of memories and experiences that stay with us and get deposited in a happy and sad. It's a mixture of emotions in that reservoir. It's a combination of joy, frustration, and anxiety, and a whole bunch of emotions, and that reservoir is ready to tap into at any point in time. So from the beginning of my writing journey, whether it was I Didn't Expect to Be Expecting, which was a playful take on accidental motherhood, which basically makes you feel as if you cannot be reintegrated into society and you've grown horns and takes away your capabilities. Or if it was Excess Baggage, which is a story about this tainted mother and daughter who've been divorced. My God, those women. And how they turn the whole concept and that label on their heads and take a trip around the world. Or the Kanpur Khufia Private Limited franchise, which is all about women holding their own in a very traditional setup, where they have their own voices and agency. Or Vigilantes, where it's a whole bunch of badass aunties, who've been relegated to, one section of society, fighting crime and doing things that we can sit and only imagine and hope to do, in our everydays. I think there's a lot of serious issues that have been tackled, from misogyny to, gender issues, gender violence, sexual exploitation, all of it. But like I said, because I tend to, tackle it with humor, it allows me to take a lot of liberties and make a lot of social commentary. It's not that I sit about, before every book and say, look, these are the 4 things I need to preach about. It naturally happens. Once you set up an ecosystem of a story, once you really spend that much time with your characters, like Anurag was just, talking about, you feel invested. And that is when, these layers of meaning and things that you're trying to say by, as those characters comes out. In particular, I want to mention why I took on Vigilantes is because I was at a juncture in my life where it just came to me. And most of these, topics, when we think about it and we try to intellectualize what was the starting point of this book, kuch nahi. You're sitting one day and suddenly it hits you that you want to just, impulsively start writing about it. So I was just amused by the fact that, society has a penchant for destruction of concepts and ideas, which are so beautiful in their origin. Aunties is meant to be a term accorded for respect to a stranger. A person delivering something to your house can be an auntie, or somebody in a car can be an auntie. Yet, what does aunties mean now? It means that you're on a timeline. Ho gaya tumhara. You're checked out of the building, you're either coming and borrowing things, or you're a nosy Parker who's asking, meddling with other people's business. And people do not want to look, further than the layer, the surface. That these are people with emotions at a certain juncture in their lives when they don't know what's possibly happening to their minds and their bodies. And nobody wants to have that bit of patience to actually understand you a little more. You're either somebody dropping your child, you're somebody sitting at home trying to make a business for yourself. There's a whole bunch of aspirations, emotions, and dreams that you have to negotiate on a daily basis. And nobody wants to look beyond that. So I think in an interesting and entertaining way, I just wanted to challenge this kind of concept or, mindset, which not just makes you think more about the women or the men for that matter in your vicinity. It makes you think a little more and be a little more appreciative of people in your immediate environment who make you who you are. I think, there's this character called Varsha Wagmare, who's the mum. And the main protagonist, she's one of the main protagonists, and she has a 17-year-old daughter called Philadelphia Wagmare. And it was my way of chastising myself for not caring enough or observing my mother enough to understand what she was going through and maybe do something at a juncture where it would have really helped her. So I think a lot of us writers relive you know,
Missed opportunity.
missed opportunities and the such. So I think it was a combination of having a lot to say from women around, the world at different junctures of their life cycle, that we're still useful, we still have a voice, and we're doing incredible things. Just give us a chance. Actually, don't give us a chance, just let us be, and we'll do wonderful things.
So I mean, we can say that you see yourself in Philadelphia Wagmare.
Pretty
A
much.
witch.
I actually see myself most being married to a Bengali as Bharatendu Bandhopadhyay, who's this most unusual cop who goes about investigating but making the most delectable food while doing the investigation. And Anurag, you were mentioning about getting the recipe wrong. I asked my in-laws for a recipe, a Bengali recipe, called Jhinge Posto, which I have included in one of the most important scenes, when he's actually coming and, facing somebody with an allegation. And my father-in-law called me up and said, nah, this is wrong. This is absolutely wrong. This is not the way to make it. Moody Ghonto is not like this. I was like, okay, fine. So I did have an objection, but then you win some, you lose some. So,
So
yeah.
now you know when you write, you have to be utter careful, extremely careful about recipes. That is one thing no one can go wrong with, right?
I think you can never keep everyone happy. And let me tell you, there are many recipes of the same dish, and it just so happens that where I was doing the talk, the person had a recipe which my recipe didn't align to. But I'm sure. I mean that's what writing and reading and these interactions are all about. I think it creates an open mind where we can interact and we can come to terms with it.
Comes with it, right?
And I think a lot of recipes are about memories. And that
Yes.
point in time, material memory, sights, smells, sounds, it's all a combination of that more than the taste. So I think it all.
Absolutely. I guess recipes are just not, mechanical things of step one, step two. A whole lot of memories, as you say, or are associated with it. And so I guess no recipe can be perfect because I think they're subjective.
Yeah, I mean, there's always the mother's recipe, which you can't question. But yes, we all have our own interpretations. Yes.
But Anurag, in your books, we see a lot of themes of corruption and ambition playing a major role. So, how do you think that these themes help create an engaging plot?
So I write a lot about greed, money, corruption, and I think these are themes which we face in our day-to-day lives. Corruption is all around us. Frankly, we deal with it. We deal with it. This doesn't matter what age group you are, what profile you come from, which part of the country you come from. Corruption, you face it on a daily basis. Likewise, greed, money. What was this thing?
Yeah, ambition and
Ambition.
corruption.
Ambition, I mean, we are all ambitious. And the question is not that whether we ambitious or not. The question is to what extent will we go to achieve whatever goal that we have set out for ourselves. And in my novels, I mean, the thing is that we live in a social structure where we have been taught that chasing greed, money, being very ambitious is something which is not seen in proper light. In some cases, it's actually a sin to be greedy, right? That's what we've been taught since childhood. Now, the fact is that we have a reptilian brain, which is basically takes us back to our animal instincts. And within those animal instincts, basic survival, you're always greedy because you're trying to survive, whether it's food, whether it's money. And that's where this concept of greed comes. And that's the reason that, irrespective of the fact that we've always been told that being greedy is sinful, it still exists, and it exists for a long period of time. So my novels actually deal with the conflict between what society tells us is ideal and what we actually face, and the dilemmas that it creates in our daily lives. We all have dilemmas because when we do things to survive, somewhere they are not in sync with what is the ideal person as per society around us. The characters are relatable because I think we all deal with these issues day to day. So in my characters, everyone will find some section of the character that they will be able to relate with. And that's why the plots and the stories that come out based on these characters are engaging. So yeah, I mean,
So I guess, yeah. I mean, we all are ambitious in a way, as you say. And that's, I guess, helps us to relate to the characters in your story. So, Richa, what next are you working on?
I believe. Okay, I can just stop. I believe there's a. It's working. Okay. Okay. I believe there is a certain section here called the Muse. I think I'm going to visit that section because I need a little bit of help. Incidentally, last year I was almost done with my sixth book. And yeah, I cannot explain this away with any justification, but my book got deleted, all of it, with all the research, with all the notes. So at the moment,
It's awful.
yeah. I mean, I cried for many weeks. I was intolerable to be around. Then I collected myself and rewrote it. So I think there's sometimes when you spend too much time with a particular topic and a certain set of characters, I think shorter visits are better because we're getting on each other's nerves. So I think I'm at a juncture where I'm just digging in deep, trying to reconnect and be judicious about the story and the characters and finish that. Along with that, I think I'm a bit of a masochist as well because I keep on changing genres, mixing things up. So I'm dabbling a bit. My next subject is a mytho-comedic fiction, if you please. And I'm working on some screenwriting projects as well. Shot myself in the foot by promising my daughter I would write a kid's book for her. So as you can see, my platter is a bit full. But yeah, I as long as I'm enjoying myself, I'll keep challenging myself. So it's all
I
good.
will look forward to your challenges.
Thank you so
What
much.
about you, Anurag? You're working on anything next, and what's it?
so I am planning to move away from thriller genre for my next novel. It's going to be a book about life discovery, a kind of Tarzan, if you might, if you need a comparison. Uh, Actually, the story was told to me by somebody. It's about 1960s India, when a padre went to a village in the tribal areas and the life there. And it's a life discovery because one of the kids from the tribe basically comes to the city, and how he adapts to the city, and how the presumption was that the city life, he will carry the learnings from the city life to further the living of the people in the village. But as things would turn out, it was the villagers who taught the city people a lot. So it's a very interesting story. I was very captivated when I heard it, and I intend to delve in it more and research on this. So I'm planning to spend some time in Chhattisgarh amongst the tribals to better understand the life there. Even though the story is periodic, it's based in the 1960s, and I think the tribes have evolved much since then, but to get some sense and then write this story about discovering yourself and life discovery, basically, going forward. Yeah.
I'm sure it's going to be very interesting, and I guess something very fresh from you.
Yeah, it's very different from the themes that I have pursued in all my earlier novels, which were predominantly around money, greed, and ambition. So it's new, and this novel is not plot based. So I will also need to. I'm challenging myself, actually. This will be more a character based novel than a plot based novel.
So I
Yeah.
guess maybe in your research, you too discover yourself, perhaps.
Oh, I am discovering myself on a daily basis. It's interesting. I mean, just veering off the path. I tend to write my characters one at a go. So 1 month I'll write one character, 1 month the next, and so on. So in my novel, like in this novel, I have a lady boy character. So 1 month I was a lady boy, 1 month I was a poker player, and so on. And my wife needs to deal with that, the idiosyncrasies which come in playing your characters month on changes. So I hope the characters I'll portray now will be better than the dark figures that I generally write about. She'll have a easier time.
Yeah, so kudos to your wife and to Richa's husband Anirban as well. So I guess your partners also need to get their due for putting up with you both when you're writing.
Absolutely.
And being
Absolutely,
different characters.
absolutely.
For the
I
multiple
mean,
personality disorders, and for generally, my daughter keeps coming up to me and saying, for somebody who writes humor, Mama, you're angry quite a bit of the time. So I apologize for it, but yeah, I couldn't do it without them.
So we are different when we write and we're different at home, I believe.
Totally.
Okay. So now let's open for questions from the audience. Yeah, we have a question here. Would you please introduce? Yes, she is. I've been observing her. Good.
Hi, Richa. So a wonderful discussion. Yeah, as you see, I have been taking notes, so it's really wonderful. So being a journalist, former journalist, so can we expect an unreported story that goes into your next book?
If I believe my family, they feel that I'm opening up their secrets and spilling them into my stories on a daily basis, so that eternal grouse is constantly around. There is something that I am working on. It's a space which is a bit of a challenge for me again, but I'm letting it marinate. In about a year or two is possibly, where I see. Because, when you're in this industry, you're constantly advised to build a brand for yourself by writing consistently in a certain way. Like I said, I have a multiple personality disorder, even in that sense. So I'm just glad that my publishers have stayed with my, vision of meandering. But I don't want to give them a heart attack yet. So I'll stay in the fiction space and then somehow maybe marry this story further down the line in about a year.
Nice.
But you have a very smiling face and you make some very, judicious notes. So it's like,
Thank
yeah.
you. And a question for you, Anurag. So basically, when you say you have written a lot of thrillers, so which character's life would you want to live?
which character's life? So, in my first novel, there's a character which I think unknowingly is a lot like me. So Jay Malhotra, the protagonist of my first novel. And he was somebody who was thrown out by the regulator in the stock markets because he was manipulating them. And then he found out that the art industry across the world is one industry which is totally unregulated. So he decided that he's going to use his skills to manipulate the art market. So Kalayug is actually based on this person going and rigging options and manipulating the prices of art pieces in India. Uh, it's interesting. When I started writing Kalayug, came to me because one of my ex-clients, as an investment banker, had purchased a painting of a very well-known artist from an auction house, and later on it turned out that that painting was a fake. So that hooked me, and then I started researching on this topic, and I found that fakes was a very big problem plaguing this industry. The issue is that it's usually kept under the carpet; it doesn't come out very well. So that's how this character took birth, and eh, this story is about a painting by Rabindranath Tagore. Rabindranath Tagore never signed his paintings, and neither did he name them because he wanted everyone to have a different view about them based on his expressions. So, what happened, unfortunately, because of that, is that his paintings are faked very often in the market. And this story, Kala Yug, is about one such painting by Rabindranath Tagore. And this guy is driving and trying to sell it unknowingly, not knowing that it's a fake. So, yeah, that character is very close to my heart.
You are not that in real life.
My action is limited to the stock markets, and I don't manipulate them in any way. I, in fact, get caught by manipulations in the market. Yes.
Do you have any other question?
Apart from your work, and the question is for both of you, apart from your work, which book or movie, the suspense horror thriller movie, would you like to suggest for the horror mystery thriller fans? Basically, your favorite.
There are, oh God, this is worse than asking an author this or to choose a book or one particular thing, and especially a person like me, it's worse than asking me to choose between children. But I would say I would recommend two. One a book, both books. One is The Shining by Stephen King, I think that changed my whole perspective on what horror is and how it is popularly defined, and how it can be written in such a visceral and interesting and such a different way. The other one I would mention would be I'm forgetting. Crime and Punishment, actually, Fyodor Dostoevsky. I read it. I don't go by popular recommendations. I read it much later in life when it was supposed to be a classic forever. And I understood why. Because the way it delves into criminal psychology and helps you understand the mind, the mental machinations of what makes a common Joe into a criminal. I think that was one of the most interesting works and earliest works of criminal psychology I can think of. So these two would be massive, recommendations. And I think in terms of Hindi movies, I should mention Madhumati. I sound like a dinosaur when I say this, but I was fascinated, by the entire setup. It was a great lesson in atmospherics. It was beautiful. And, this whole concept of, rebirth and, all of, the way the story was treated and how it was visualized was fantastic.
Uh, for me, I mean, I think the ultimate thriller for me, and I mean the book and now a movie, has been The Day of the Jackal, by Frederick Forsyth. I grew up reading that book, and I saw the movie, the earlier version, and then I saw even the new version, what they've done with it. Although I'm not very happy with the new adaptation of it. Uh, I mean, I still get goosebumps, though I've seen that movie I don't know how many times. And I mean, that's what thrillers are all about. That even when you know the story, it's still you are edge of the seat and biting your nails when there are specific scenes in The Day of the Jackal when it plays out. So that's been the movie, and as I mentioned earlier, Frederick Forsyth is one writer that I've been really fascinated with, and hopefully someday in the future I can also write a spy thriller like he does. Yeah.
Thank you. And any questions more?
Maybe not just a conversation, maybe you can carry on the conversation in the booth there.
Yes, and
Yeah.
hopefully with our books, because that is actually what's going to help allow us to write more. So, see
So
you
I
there.
hope you all can get some signed copies from them as well. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you so much,
Thank you so
Anurag.
much.
Yeah. Thank you
Thank
everyone
you.
for being
Richa.
here.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Richa.
Thank you. Thank you.